His skin is white just like a ghost, thick Irish roots and his blonde hair, and he sounds like a Chicago superfan. A music nerd with a collection of CDs from here to there. Yes, Andy Dare is in Chicago, interviewing and barbecuing. It's the Andy Dare Show. It's the Andy Dare Show.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for checking out the Andy Dare Show. This is episode 105, and I'm joined by an awesome dude, Paul Kolderie. He is a record producer, record engineer, musician, been in the game for over 30 years, and just extends my pretty extensive work with awesome producers in the music business. And I've had the opportunities to speak with Steve Albini, Jack Endino, Steve Fisk, and now you can add Paul Kolderie on the list. And I'm just so grateful he took the time out of his day. He's had his hands in dozens and dozens of legit classic albums. Albums by the Pixies, by Uncle Tupelo, by Hole, Radiohead, Firehose, tons of good stuff. And he's from, I guess he's originally from Minnesota, but made his name out east. Working up in Boston at Fort Apache, was a legendary record studio, and met and worked with tons of awesome talent in the late 80s, early 90s out there on the East Coast. And he's a funny, nice guy. He has great stories, stuff about Warren Zevon, stuff about the recording of the first Radiohead album. Just want to thank you guys for your continued support for my little show. I'm just about to reach 3 years doing this on my own as the Andy Dare Show, and I really could not have kept it going without your guys' input. And the way you could support my show is obviously by supporting my awesome sponsors, but a real easy way is going right to theandydareshow.com. On the right-hand side of the page, you'll find an Amazon banner. You'll click that. It'll take you right to Amazon. You spend $0 extra, 0 extra cents, but you tip your cap to the Andy Dare Show, and it means a lot to me. And just to support Paul, why don't you click over to Amazon and get yourself the new deluxe massive Uncle Tupelo reissue for the No Depression album that originally was released in 1990, and it slowly has found a humongous cult audience, and it's known as starting this little subgenre called alternative country. But whether the creators like that name or not, it's not really important. It is known as pretty much the first alternative country record that put it all together in one easy to listen to package. Other bands had tried it before, but Uncle Tupelo really perfected it on their first album, No Depression. So check that out. It's got a bunch of bonus material on it, and it just sounds so massive. I got to listen to it last week, and the No Depression reissue is amazing. Check that out. And while you're at Amazon, why don't you check out the new Mike Gordon, obviously of the band Phish. He's been doing Phish for over 30 years, has stepped out and done a couple solo albums, but this one's supposedly different from all that's come before it. And it's Mike really going outside of his comfort zone, trying new genres, trying new methods of bringing that Mike Gordon sound to you. So check that out. That's called Mike Gordon's Overstep album. And that'll be out, I believe, at the end of this month, but you can pre-order at Amazon. All right, just want to thank everybody for the support. Want to thank everybody who's checked out my photos on Instagram. That's instagram.com/AndyDarer. Pretty much a cool place for me to put old photos, new photos, stuff from concerts I've been to and whatnot. Want to thank you for following that, and everybody who's kept up with me on social media. It means a lot. Also, huge props to the guys who have been helping me with Darer Network, our little podcast network. I want to thank Jay Porks for doing a show every Monday straight out of Staten Island, New York City. Follow him on Twitter. That's Jay Porks. And every Thursday, you're getting a The Tyler Kale Show, brought to you by Tyler Kale the creator of dopspot.com, whole bunch of good stuff. He does a show every Thursday. Follow him at Tyler Kale. And our little Twitter for the whole network is Darer Network. I'm going to be working on the website this spring. I got a couple people interested in helping me out. And it should be really easy to use. And we're looking to find more podcasts to add to our roster. So thank you, everybody, for the support. And welcome to my episode 105 chat with Paul Kolderie. Hey everybody, thank you so much for checking out the Andy Dare Show. This is episode 105. I'm joined by a producer, engineer extraordinaire, Paul Kolderie. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, just appreciate you taking the time out. You have quite a legacy going, so much work you've done, and you got a busy 2014 started already. You got a new Mike Gordon album, Overstep. I was just wondering about Mike Gordon. Is he a seasoned pro at this point, or is it still hard to get a guy that likes to improvise and jam on stage? Is it still hard for him to rein it all in the studio and to concentrate on getting a song finished, actually?
Oh, God, no, not at all. I thought Mike was very focused. When we started talking about doing the record, I went up to Berlin, and we sat down, and he played through the songs that he's been working on these songs for years with his friend Scott and various other musicians, mostly those two, though. And so I think it was almost the opposite. There's no jamming at all on this record.
That's awesome. I'm sure he gets a little tired of that after 30 plus years in Phish. Wants to try experimenting with other stuff, right?
Right. That's kind of the point of doing a solo record. And these songs were very composed, And the question was just who to get to play drums. And we had a really fun couple of meetings where we threw out some really amazing names. He's met a lot of great drummers over the years.
So he went with Matt Chamberlain, is that correct?
Yes, who was awesome. He was he just understood the job, and he came in and performed amazingly. And it was really a pleasure working with him. I had never actually had the chance to work with him before.
Sure.
But it was really a pleasure in every respect.
Was he a fan of Mike's before, or was this something new that he was just trying something different?
That Matt was trying out? Well,
yeah.
I mean, Matt was hired as a session drummer. It wasn't really like a collaboration as much as just a straight up.
I got you. Nice.
But I mean, I think Matt was aware of Phish, and kind of in the way that I was. I mean, I'd never worked with him before, but Mike and I had been talking about doing something for really several years. Even back when I had Camp Street Studios in Cambridge, we were talking about doing some stuff back in 2010. So
nice.
Really, this record's been brewing a long time.
Well, it's kind of like an all, up east. Everybody kind of works together at one point or another. I mean, you started off in Boston with Fort Apache and stuff. And how about that whole late '80s scene? Was that built on competition or compassion for one another? Was it a friendly competition with the Pixies, the Lemonheads, Buffalo Tom, all those bands that were actually pretty much in the limelight at the time? Was there any fierce competition between bands?
Well, it was a great time. It was probably a little more cohesive looking in retrospect. I mean, I don't really think that those bands, it's not like they all hung out and drank together at the Rat or anything. I mean, certainly competition, everybody was trying to do good work, and I don't know if they were trying to outdo each other, but
sure.
But it was just a time when everybody was kind of similarly inspired. There were a lot of inspired people working in the same area, and we were lucky enough to work with a lot of them.
Nice.
I think kind of because we built a studio that was unpretentious and pretty well equipped and had good like-minded people, behind the console,
Nice. So what was you were in the Sex Execs and you were in bands, but then I read in an interview that...
You read your research.
Yeah. So,
I heard there was an interview where you said there was a point in time where it just clicked in your brain where I was having more fun capturing the sounds of other bands than creating the sounds myself. Was there a certain moment in time, or was there a certain year?
Well, Sex Execs play. Our big year was like '83, and we probably broke up in '84. And we were all best friends and lived in a house together, and we had a really great time. And so after that, that band was really fun. And so after that, I started working with people here and there. But I realized that I wasn't having as much fun playing, and I was really getting into recording. And the Sex Execs we recorded all our own demos and made several records, and that was kind of my introduction to big studios. So after that, I kind of wanted to get back to that. And I realized one essential truth about the recording, which is that, if you're in a band, you're pretty much stuck in that band. Unless you're Mike Gordon, then you can make your own solo record and all that stuff. But as a producer, I can do all kinds of things. I can go make a blues record or a hard rock record or whatever kind of record I feel like making. And it seemed like there was more flexibility, and I would be able to make more records by more people in a year than if I was trying to be an artist.
Sure.
Plus, I was never a songwriter myself. I mean, I'm basically an editor. You have authors, and then you have editors in this world, and I realized I was going to be on the other side,
Yeah, I feel like it's also got to be nice to be away, like outside of any band argument that happens in the studio or any drama that's going on. Like you get to just be kind of a fly on the wall and not put your 2 cents in and not be part of it. How about like a band that really would duke it out in the studio or have a lot of static in the studio, and you would just kind of feel a little awkward maybe during the recordings, if you mind saying? I don't know.
Well, there was a certain amount of that during the Pixies recordings that I was involved in,
Sure. Was that Come On Pilgrim or Surfer Rosa?
I wasn't involved in Surfer Rosa. That was Albini, as you know. But the first record that we did, and then I did some B-sides and stuff, and there was always a certain amount of what the hell is going on. I mean, I remember when we did a song called Into the White, which is a kind of a B-side of Doolittle or something, and it was clear that Charles hadn't really finished the song yet, and there was a certain amount of argument about which direction to go, and I remember him just pacing around the studio going, I need a sound, I need a certain vowel sound, I need a word, and people were kind of pissed off that things weren't done, or I don't know.
Sure.
Occasionally, the band isn't. It's most often because the song isn't done, and people are arguing about how to finish it. If the song is done, then the band usually doesn't have too many arguments about how to do it.
Well, it's always a stressful situation going to the studio when the clock is running and you're paying for it, and you still haven't finished the song. So that's tough.
Right. Well, to be honest, as a producer, I would always try to get into the studio. I wouldn't want to go into it in that I wouldn't want to get into that situation. It was more situations where I was an engineer and I didn't really have control of the situation.
Sure. That
things would erupt that I didn't have control over.
Nice.
But you just got to take it as it comes. And I think that if you're going to be a successful producer and engineer, you got to learn to defuse and handle those kind of situations that come up. And there's politics involved always in sessions and stuff. And I think that if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to be able to steer through that, and every session is different. So there's no set solution. You've got to just figure out like, okay, what's happening here? Who's,
sure.
This guy feel like he's not getting, enough attention, or that he had an idea and no one was listening, or, what's happening here. So
kind of be a mediator at a point. How about like a producer that you love to engineer for?
That I would love to engineer for?
Yeah.
Bob Ezrin.
Nice.
It's funny. When I was working with Mike's record, we were in the middle of mixing, and Mike was. There were emails flying around with Phish about who to produce their record, like who should do it, and various names were flying around. And I turned around and said, Mike, you guys should get Bob Ezrin to do it. Guys, just the light went off in my head. Like I I thought that would be a good idea. And he was like, that's a good idea. And so he sent that out to all the guys, and everybody answered, that's a good idea. And it turns out they hired him.
Wow. So for the new Phish album, it's going to be Bob Ezrin?
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep.
I always felt like they needed that producer that would really just get them I don't know about getting all the songs in the right order and stuff like that. Sometimes Phish has trouble with getting like the right pacing in their albums and stuff like that. But shoot, Ezrin could totally bring that to him. I think that's an awesome idea.
I know. It was funny. It was almost like a voice in my head that said, "You should tell Mike to get Bob Ezrin."
That's incredible.
So I said, Mike, if you want me to engineer it, I'm game. But to be honest, I mean, I obviously worked my ass off on the Mike record. Bob's got his own people and stuff. But if I'd love to work for Chris Thomas. I'd love to work for there's a lot of dead ones I'd like to work for.
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately. How about the new Uncle Tupelo reissue deluxe package here? That was released in 1990, and I guess I'm sure this has been beat to death, but it kind of started a movement of alt country. At the time, obviously, you guys had no idea that you were creating a new kind of genre, I guess you would say, right?
Well, again, hindsight is 20/20. But to be honest, when we did that record, I knew that we had done something new.
Sure.
I mean, not new, having done the Pixies a few years earlier, I was clearly, it wasn't the first time we had done that sort of loud, soft thing. But the idea of country music meets the Minutemen, meets Husker Du, that felt new. And when we had finished the record, I felt like, this one, I think this is good. It's funny how sometimes the things that you don't think are your best work sometimes do better than you think they're going to do. And to be honest, that record did a little less well than I thought it was going to do.
Jeez.
When we finished it, I thought, well, this is a home run, and partly because it was on a kind of a small label that wasn't very together. It didn't have a lot of resources, that limited it to some extent. I think it's too bad it didn't come out on Columbia in a day.
Yeah.
You got to remember it came out on Rockville Records, which had been Giant Records, and the most money that company ever made was when they sold their. Well,
when they sold it, yeah.
They ever made, but when they sold them into Hervé off,
Sure.
But that's not for lack of trying. There were some good people at that label, and I don't blame anybody. You know how it is with limited resources, and there was only so much they could do, and it did get a lot of attention, but I think it was maybe a little ahead of its time in a way.
Oh, certainly. How about there had to be you could tell there was some tension between Tweedy and Jay Farrer, or were they still all buds in 1990?
In 1990, it was definitely all for one for all. My recollection was that they had, or what they told me anyway, I think, was that they had all just broken up with their girlfriends, or their girlfriends broke up with them, and they were kind of like three guys in a van. They came out to Boston to make their record, and they were kind of sleeping on the floor, but it was working. It was fun. It was exciting, and as like Woody Allen says, a band is like a shark. As long as it's moving forward quickly and feeling like things are happening, it's pretty easy to stay content.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think at the time they were, they were into this sound. And then when we got together to do the second record a year or so later, that was when cracks started to show, because there were questions about direction, and of course they ended up going in a sort of a quieter direction, which was exciting to me.
Sure. But, yeah, was Tweedy behind the whole like punk sound in the band, and Jay was more in like the traditional country and folk vein? Or were they kind of all mixed up?
I think at the time it was pretty all mixed up. I think that was the point. I don't think it was like, it definitely was not a situation where one guy in the band was going, I don't like this hard rock.
Turn down the volume. No, turn up the volume.
They were doing what they wanted to do at the time.
Nice.
And it's funny, I've done a few interviews in conjunction with this re-release, and had a chance to revisit the record, and man, the songwriting is great. It just comes at you in a kind of the songs just keep coming at you, like wham, like changes, choruses that unfold into other things and parts that you didn't expect. And
yeah,
I think it was good songwriting, and I think that was it. Hooks, it's hooky. good singing and passion. There's just a lot of excitement in that music, and I think that's why it's still being listened to, which is a great, tribute to everyone involved. Really.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, there's.
Yep.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you could tell all the all the parts were in place already. Like it sounds like the first Wilco album. It sounds like the first Sun Volt album. Like they didn't really they were already formed like on their first project, which a lot of bands is not the case,
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. In fact, that was one of those things where the sound just kind of burst out, and then after that, things kind of got in the way, and then the band exploded, and the two main guys were able to kind of go back and do what they wanted to do. I think it's been a really interesting journey, and more power to them for keeping going this whole time. It's been 20 plus years, so.
Yeah.
This episode of The Andy Dare Show is brought to you in part by Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue in Westmont, Illinois. Family owned and operated since 1997, Uncle Bub's is the real deal barbecue. A family-friendly restaurant open 7 days a week. Also, it's a full-service catering company doing weddings, pig roasts, luau's, grill packages, you name it. They have a friendly, helpful staff that will make sure that your party goes off without a hitch. Call them at 630-493-9000. Visit them at 132 South Cass Avenue in Westmont, Illinois, and UncleBubs.com. Hey man, I know you like grilling. I know you like getting those dark grill marks on your burgers, fish, chicken. And I know you don't want to just dry your meat out like you're cooking with a hairdryer. Why not get the Man Grate and click through the AndyDareShow.com's banner so we can keep the lights on here at Honeycomb Hideout Studios in gorgeous Westmont, Illinois. The Man Grate. This episode of The Andy Dare Show is brought to you in part by Record Utopia, a music lover's dream with thousands of vinyl records, musical instruments, and sound gear. They buy, sell, and trade. Give them a call at 630-963-1957. Visit them in Westmont, Illinois at 309 West Ogden Avenue, on the web at recordutopia.com. It's always a good, relaxed atmosphere. Check them out, Record Utopia.
Well, speaking of a band that you met early on, and their sound was in the nascent period for sure. Radiohead, you did the first album for Radiohead, and it sounds like nothing else in their catalog. It sounds like youth. It sounds like alternative rock. It actually sounds like grunge. It sounds like something that you can hum to, which you can't. I don't know about Kid A. It's not as catchy, but obviously they would find different avenues and paths. How about like a first recollection of Tom York and company?
Well, Sean Slade and I, who did the record together, and we also did the Uncle Tupelo record together, it should be noted, and many other records.
Sure.
We went over to England looking for work. We were trying to get jobs, and we got an interview with the people at EMI, Nick Gatfield, who was running EMI at the time, and was a friend of our manager. And we sat down with him. I remember bumming a cigarette, at the meeting, which I guess you could still smoke in record company offices back then. And he said he had a copy of a record on our desk by a group called Clockhammer, who was from Nashville. Ironically, Ken Coomer, who played, with Wilco,
oh, nice,
was the drummer. And we had done it in a quickie record, 10 days, 12 days. But they were power trio, kind of, from Nashville, rock trio from Nashville. And the record sounded good, came out good. And I think our manager had sent it to Nick, and Nick had the copy on his desk, and he said, did you do this record? And we said, yeah, sure. We did it. And he goes, well, did you do all of it? Because at the time in England, this was the early 90s, at the time there was this thing where people would produce one song on a record and say that they, kind of say, well, I produced this record, or there was a lot of credit muddling.
It's before the internet where you could just look it up, so you could, I produced that whole album, yeah, but. Right,
exactly. There was a bit of fudging, a lot of fudging going on.
Nice.
But we weren't really credit fudgers. We had done a whole record at Fort Apache, and it wasn't a question of anyone else no one else was involved. And I said, yeah, sure, we did it, because he was kind of making sure that we had been the ones who got the guitar sound, because the guitar was very aggressive on that record. And I said, sure, yeah. And he goes, well, we have this band that we signed, and they have 3 guitar players, and we're just having a little trouble getting the guitars to really happen, like getting a distinctive guitar sound.
Sure.
And we said, well, that sounds interesting. And he said, let me play a couple songs. And he played a couple songs which were not any of the songs. I think they were from the Drill record or something, the Drill EP that had come out already.
Sure.
I don't really remember what songs he played, but it wasn't, anything. There weren't any of the big songs that anyone would have known. But it was obvious that Tom had a really good voice and the band sounded interesting, and we were looking for jobs. We weren't particularly choosy, so we were like, yeah, sounds good to me. And he goes, okay, well, I'll talk to your manager, and we'll see what happens with that. And I remember going home and going to see CHA right after that. It was must have been March or something. And I was down in Austin and got a call. This was pre-cell phones, obviously. Got a call, saying, would you like to come to England and go songs with the band? And so it kind of went from there. We met them for the first time at what's, I guess, they call the Apple Shed, which is their practice space. And, kind of went from there. I mean, they were great guys. It was fun. We had a great time. They were a really young band. They were a little bit out of their depth being on a major label at that point. Kind of, the politics were a little overwhelming. But I will say that one thing that has really always helped Radiohead, a tremendously talented band and songwriters and everything, but they've always had this management team in place from the beginning. Chris Hufford and Bryce Edge. And I think both of them have kind of taken a step back. I think Chris is kind of retired at this point. But the thing that Radiohead had that really helped them so much was that they had a management team who had been through it, much in the way that, you looked at my resume and you saw that when I came to be a producer, I had been in a band, I had been flirting with major labels, I had made records, I knew what it was like to be on the other side. And that's what Radiohead's management team knew. They had gone through the whole ringer in the 80s with a band that you've never heard of from England.
Who's that?
They went honestly, I don't remember their name.
Okay.
I think you could probably look it up.
But they'd been there and seen that. Okay.
One of the first things they told me was that they sat down with us. We went to lunch before we even met the band with Chris, and he said, "I got to tell you, we went for the whole ride in the 80s. We got signed. We had the lawyer. We had the manager. We had the business manager. We went on tour. We made the record, and the whole thing went in the dumper."
Sure.
And so we've seen the dark side of this, and we know what can happen, and so we want to make sure that Radiohead doesn't happen to them. And I think that they had a vision of breaking the bands in America. Maybe that would be easier than England, and it was. And they had a vision for the whole thing. And I always want to I always try to take time to credit them, because as talented as Radiohead were and are, and we've all seen bands that made a wrong turn or it didn't quite happen for, and you wonder, like, why didn't it happen for that band?
Sure.
Or why did it happen for a certain band? And when you see people that have been successful lately, like Lady Gaga or someone like that, there's always or Taylor Swift or whatever, there's always a very strong manager. With Taylor Swift, it's Scott Borchetta, guy who runs Big Machine. I hope I'm saying his name right. And, with Lady Gaga, was that guy Troy Carter. There's always a strong manager in there who knows how to play the game, because very few artists succeed. I don't know if any artists really succeed only on their own merits.
It doesn't come out of thin air. That's true. That's awesome.
I mean, the music does, but success in the music business is
a whole different thing.
Always a team effort,
Did Nigel Godrich? Did you meet Nigel Godrich, or they met him on the follow-up album, The Bends, right?
Yeah, The Bends was. I've never met Nigel, although I'm a big admirer of his work. I think his engineering is probably just as good as it gets, really.
Yeah.
His stuff is just clear, but really interesting and exciting. And he's done some amazing records.
Sure.
He was the engineer, I think, at one of the studios when they went to do the Airbag song.
Oh, I got you.
I guess that was kind of hanging around. I think he was. Yeah, I think he had been an engineer on some of the stuff they did at Rack Studios, or one of the places they did the bends. When they did the bends, they were kind of staggering around, going to expensive studios. They were at the Manor for a while. They were at Rack. They were at Abbey Road or whatever, and they were a little bit confused, and they had made a lot of recordings, and they started songs again and again. One of the songs on the bends, I know it was the third attempt at recording the song.
Oh, huh.
That song, Just You Do It To Yourself.
Sure.
And there were a lot of false starts, and I remember Ed O'Brien saying to me that they pretty much thought that it was a pile of crap and that they had blown it.
Nice.
That they really didn't think it could be pulled together, and Lecky started mixing the record, and he was having trouble finishing a mix, and they came back to us to work on that, to do mixes on that record, basically in desperation, because they just didn't know what to do, and the only thing they could think of was that we had mixed a song that was a hit for them, and
sure.
so I think they basically said, well, let's give those guys a try, and they did at the time. This was analog, and the record was on 24-track tape in England, and so they made copies without asking Lecky, I guess, which kind of pissed him off.
Oh.
They made, well, it wasn't really his decision to do it, but it was one of those things where somebody went in and just grabbed the masters and made copies and sent them to us. So we were mixing from copies of 2-inch, because obviously they weren't going to send the only copy over to us in America, in Boston.
Yeah.
But I think it's not something you would choose to do, but then at the same time, no one really cares, and the copies were done professionally, I guess. So I think the first thing we did was that song Bones.
Okay.
And I remember putting it up, and nobody sent us a rough or anything. It was just, but we saw how the track set up, and of course the engineering was really good. Lecky and his people were great, and I just remember thinking like, well, this is easy. It's just like the Pixies,
Yeah.
And
for you too. Yeah.
Yeah, we just put it up, and I think we did that in a couple of hours, maybe at the most, and we sent that over, and Chris and Bryce, the managers, told me they put it on in their, they put it on. We probably sent them a DAT, and they put it on in their office, and they started jumping up and down, going, yay, we did it, like so they got it, you know what I mean? So
you got the guitars finally.
Exactly, yeah. Whatever it was about the sound, and I think I've never spoken to Lecky about it. We've never met, but he said something like, well, I don't suppose we could have gotten it quite as blasting as they did.
Nice. Was there any feeling of them wanting to go electronic back in 94, 93, 95, but they kind of wanted to appeal to the masses who were in love with guitar rock, even the grunge, the alternative scene? Was there a feeling like, let's make a loud guitar album because that's kind of what's big right now, but we would really want to make something that sounds like Aphex Twin, or was it just what naturally came out of those guys?
No, that's what they wanted to do. I mean, that song, Anyone Can Play Guitar, that is a very close concept of what we were feeling. And I don't know if this has been talked about too much, but when we made that song, we got everyone that worked at the studio. I mean, I played a track of guitar. Sean played a track. The woman who cooked the food played a track. Everybody, we got everybody in the studio that was there to play some kind of guitar noise, and we mixed it into the track. And people had different approaches. Some people tried to actually play the song. I think I went in and just played some white noise or something, and Johnny played a track that was played with a coin as a pick, and there a pound makes a good pick.
Sure.
Pound coin, but it was the sound. I mean, shoegaze music and Britpop was kind of nascent, and the ride was big, and
sure.
And they were very much a part of that. I mean, they had influences. I mean, those guys had a lot of influences. Johnny was a big opera fan and classical music, and there were all kinds of influences in the pot. But at the time, I don't think there was absolutely no arguments about the direction of the music. They had their songs, and we were trying to record them. I mean, the script was there, and we were just trying to get it down and make it sound as good and feel as good as possible. But it was only after OK Computer that they really opened up to that. I think that
is true.
Side of things.
Yeah.
When they were literally trying to find some other way to express themselves. I mean, they basically said, "All right, we've conquered the world. We're at the top of the mountain. It's all down from here. We've got to instead step out into space."
Yeah. That's amazing. I just got one more album to talk about. Thanks for taking the time out. I really appreciate it. Been reading this book by Danny Goldberg called Bumping into Geniuses. Yeah, incredible read. And towards the end of it, of course, he meets up with Warren Zevon. And
oh, wait, you know that's Ahmet Ertegun's line, by the way.
What? Bumping into Geniuses? That is okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Ahmet Ertegun. Legendarily, David Geffen was in Ahmet's office and said, "Ahmet, how do you do it? How did you do it? What's the secret to success in the music business?" And Ahmet got up from behind his desk, ran around the office with his head down, bumping into things, and David Geffen was like, "Huh?" And Geffen was like, "Schmuck, I'll do it again." And this is an Ahmet's book, which I just read, called The Last. It's not his book. It's called The Last Sultan. It's a biography of him, and by Robert Greenfield, who did Stones Touring Party and a bunch of books about the Stones and stuff. But anyway, he does it again, and he bumps into David, and David's like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "You're running around bumping into geniuses. Run around with your head down. If you're lucky, you bump into geniuses, and it's all good from there." But anyway, so
that's
Danny,
awesome.
Danny, of course, Danny worked at Atlantic, obviously with Led Zeppelin.
Sure.
And it's obviously he followed the same thing. So I'm sorry. Yes, you were going to ask about Warren Zevon.
Yeah, Warren Zevon. He's definitely one of a kind. Very dark, sarcastic wit about the guy. And you got to work on the second to the last record called "Life Will Kill Ya."
I think there were two more. I think there was one called "The Wind." There was one called "My Ride's Here," and then there was one.
And then
called
"The Wind."
The last one called "The Wind." Yeah. But yeah, it's funny because it follows directly from Radiohead.
Really?
Well, because
how so?
He supposedly went in to talk about doing a record with Danny, I guess, or I'm not sure who the meeting was with, but somebody basically suggested us, and Warren said, "Who are those guys?" And they said, "Well, they did Radiohead," and Warren was like, "Oh, that's it. I love Radiohead. It's those guys."
Really? I wouldn't expect it. Huh.
And of course, Danny, we had done a bunch of records for Danny. We did the Mighty Mighty Boss Town for Mercury when Danny was the head of it. And Danny was one of my favorite record guys I ever worked for because as a record executive, he called me up before we did that Boss Tones record. He called me up and he said, "Hi, Paul, where are we at with this record? Do we have the songs?" And I said, "Danny, I think we do." And he's like, "All right, that's all I need to hear. Go make the record." He basically challenged me, but then he supported me when I said, "No, we got what we need," and I think I was right. I mean, the record sold millions, and their team did a great job, and I think I really appreciated the
trust
way that the way I was treated, and then he was also very gracious. When the record was a hit, he called me up and he said, "You were right. Way to go."
Nice.
He was a really good coach. He was someone that I really was proud to work for, and he, in a very subtle way, he motivated us to do a good job. I mean, we always try to do a good job, but I really appreciated the way that he did it, and he kind of did the same with Warren.
Sure.
I'm sure when Warren said that, he was like, "I know those guys. We'll make it happen."
Yep.
And they sent us the demos, and the demos were awesome. Really, what he had done was slave away in his home studio and make some great demos, which we basically turned into a record in most cases, without really re-recording very much of it.
Okay.
We added things to it, but like My Shit's Fucked Up, he had that.
Nice.
He had the vocal and the sort of keyboard part of it, and we added things to it, and we had some fun doing it. Warren was difficult, everyone that's worked with him knows that he was kind of a difficult person, but my sense was that it was kind of an act. Like, I think that he felt that he had to be difficult, otherwise people wouldn't take him seriously and he would get walked on, and I think
Sure.
that came from that LA world where everyone was like a super stud,
Yeah.
Russ Kunkel on drums and Waddy Wachtel on guitar or whatever, and everybody was it was kind of an ego fest, and if you let anyone, they would kind of come in and try to take over your record. So I think he developed that. I think he developed that porcupine kind of exterior because it was a tough world out there, and
bulldog skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he was also someone who had been forced, obviously, to give up drugs and alcohol, and I've worked with a few people like that where they were never going to not be pissed about that they just missed having a good time.
Yeah.
That was the way that they, Warren was a heavy abuser of drugs and alcohol, and it was part of his life, and he was just never going to not be upset that he couldn't have a drink, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. That's my personal thing. I'm not saying he told me that, but it was.
Didn't he swap that out with being a womanizer a little bit towards the end of his life, though? That's what I heard.
It's possible. I mean, at one point, we're not. When we're in the studio, we don't like to have a lot of other people there, and there weren't a lot of guests, and I certainly didn't have my girlfriend drop by the studio or anything. And at one point, Warren turned to us and was like, "Guys, where are the girls? Where are the women here? How come there's not more girls dropping by this?" And I was just like, "Look, Warren, that's up to you. That's not my job. It's not my job to provide you with any sort of entertainment in that respect."
That's funny.
And he was kind of like, "Yeah, okay, fair enough." He was just trying to get under our skin, what I mean?
Yeah.
He was like, "I don't see any girls around here. Are you guys gay or something? Like, what's going on?" And we're like, "No, we're working on your record right now."
We're trying to get this thing finished, Warren. Come on, let's.
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, I really didn't have any sense of that. I mean, it's in the book that he was actually kind of a terrifying sex addict, but like I said, we didn't deal with that side of him at all.
You're just trying to get the songs done. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what he got up to, after he left the studio or anything like that, or whatever else. It didn't seem to come into play really at all. But I think that, like at one point he caught me smoking a cigarette or something, and he got pissed off because he was like, "Look, I can't smoke cigarettes, so you can't either."
Nice.
Me and Slade, we were sneaking off and smoking some weed, and he, at one point he goes like, "I know you're smoking your weed, but I can't. It doesn't." He goes, "It doesn't. I can't tell. It's not affecting your performance." Well, I mean, that's the thing, I've had people say that to me, like they didn't want stoned engineers, and obviously a lot of people have stoned engineer stories where like some guy erased some shit or forgot to rewind or punched in at the wrong place or something like that. But we always kind of prided ourselves that we wouldn't let that affect our performance. So
it would take a lot of weed to make you affect a performance, I think. Yeah.
Well, that was his thing. It's like, as long as I can't tell you're doing it, I don't mind. That's fine.
Yeah.
Don't do it in front of me.
More power
to
you.
But the songs were great.
Yeah, I think that's his best late era album. Yeah, The Wind is great, but that's one I can't listen to just because of the he's dying at that point, and it's really tough to get through that one. Yeah, too sad for me. So, but yeah, man, I really appreciate all the stories, and this has been an incredible chat. Is there any website I can show my listeners or send them to, or anything that I can plug for you?
Well, I appreciate that. I have just a vestigial website that just serves as a, if someone looks me up, it's just to, call my manager, basically,
Sure.
And there's a brief list of credits and stuff. Yeah, I honestly, man, I'm sorry. I don't have it. I'm
no big deal.
Not against Twitter or anything like that. I'm on Twitter and stuff like that. I don't post very often. And, I'm on Facebook and all that sort of thing. So, I'm I'm not hard to find. That's my dog.
Yeah.
Choking.
Oh, I got you.
I'm not hard to find, but I don't have like a big website or anything like
Yeah, well, you got the Mike Gordon album coming out at the end of February, Overstep, for ATO Records. Any other projects for the spring you'd like to mention?
Yes. Can I say one more thing about the Mike record?
Sure.
One reason that I wanted to get involved with this project was that it's kind of like, to me, it kind of represents the new model of how an artist and a producers and engineers can work together. You know, there was no record company involved here. This project was completely bankrolled by Mike.
Oh.
And of course he has the funds to do it, but it gave us complete freedom. It was really liberating. It was fun to not have any record company involved at all and just feel like if we made ourselves happy and made a record that we liked, that we could get it directly to the fans, and that I certainly would hope that they will like it too. ATO is involved mostly because that's just the record company arm of Red Light Management, which is, you know, basically they were always reserving the right to step in and say, hey, this is good, let us get involved with this, and I'm happy that they did that. But it's funny to hear you say that it's going to be on ATO Records because the whole time we were doing that record, there was no label, and it was really cool. And to be honest, I don't work for labels very much anymore. I don't work for major labels really at all.
Not much of a need to in 2014, right?
Yeah, I don't do, you know, because I'm not doing the, you know, the Lady Gagas or the, you know, the Bruno Marses of the or the Justin Biebers of the world, you know. And that's pretty much what labels do now. They do teen sensation acts. They do top 40, and I don't really do top 40. If I get a top 40 hit, it's by accident, you know. But and I've been lucky enough to have a few accidents.
Sure.
But I think that it's, you know, I don't do it. But other records that are coming out, I mixed a record by a group called Yellow Ostrich, who are on Barsuk, and that record's beautiful. It's really cool, interesting textures, great band. I like that. I did mix the Mark Mulcahy record, who's kind of, I think he's on fire in England, but he was the leader of Miracle Legion years ago. Oh. And that's a record really worth finding. It's great. He's been doing some cool, like, Fresh Air, and he's doing Mountain Stage and stuff, but he's just a great artist, and his record's great. What else is coming out? A couple more things. I just mixed Aaron Freeman with half of Ween.
Oh, nice.
And maybe in a way the less visible half during the last few years, but he's caught with a record that just blew me away. I was amazed at the songwriting and the way that it's done, and I think that'll be out in the late fall. He'll be touring this summer, and
awesome.
it's going to be called Freeman.
Cool.
So that's one to look for as well.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, just want to thank you so much for taking the time out. All these albums we've talked about are very important and near and dear to me.
You bet. If there's any questions, or if I wasn't clear, or if I mumbled or anything, just feel free to check back with me. I'm happy to make sure. I'm obviously, you know, I want everything to come out as I want to be clear, and if I was unclear about something, I'm happy to elaborate.
You were totally clear. You were totally awesome. Love these stories, man. So on behalf of Paul Kolderie, this is Andy Dare signing off for the Andy Dare Show.
Be sure to follow Andy on Twitter. That's at Andy Dare. And like our show on Facebook. That's facebook.com/The Andy Dare Show. Videos at youtube.com/Andrew Martin Dare. And we're on iTunes. Just search The Andy Dare Show. Please leave a review. Thanks so much to our wonderful sponsors, Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue, Record Utopia, The Band Great, and Amazon.com. Theme song courtesy of Rich Banks Music. Thank you so much for checking out The Andy Dare Show. TheAndyDareShow.com.